On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, we ask a very simple question, and we do it a whole bunch of times. Who plays more?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean, and you can, of course, find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. You can join the Locked On Raptors Discord server as well. It's free to do, baby. The link is in the description of the podcast. Great place to come hang out, talk Raptors, talk off-season ball, talk video games, talk about stuff you're cooking in your kitchen. It's a lovely listener family we got building around the show. And again, it's free to join. Would love to see you become part of our Discord community. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts on the audio side of things. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Much appreciated when you go ahead and do that. You can also go to YouTube and subscribe to the Locked On Raptors YouTube channel. Look at my mug each and every day. Can't think of a better sales pitch than that. So go subscribe, hit the notification bell button, and you'll get a heads up via push notification every single time the show is about to premiere or go live, which is a wonderful thing. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, on today's show, bit of a fun little game show we've got lined up with our pal Jamar Hinds, the God of the Game recap from Raptors Republic. We're going to play a little game called Who Plays More? We'll explain the rules in a second, but first we got to bring in our pal Jamar. Jamar, what's going on, my friend?
I'm doing good. I made the change that I promised. I put Skylar Diggins instead of DeRozan, so we'll see.
It seems like DeMar DeRozan and his ties to the Toronto Raptors getting more tenuous by the day as he continues to tour around with Kendrick Lamar. And look, I can't say I blame him. Very clearly, Kendrick Lamar is winning this battle. We'll leave that there for now. We will get into the game we got lined up for today, Jamar. The Raptors roster, look, it's weird. There are lots of guys fighting for spots at different positions. We've gone through it. Half of the roster could be classified as a shooting guard if you really wanted to do so. And so there's going to be some position battles, one would think, some competition for minutes around the team. And I wanted to spend today just kind of digging into some of those little position battles, some of those fights for minutes, and just simply ask, who plays more between a couple of guys at a certain spot? We will run through the rookies, Jonathan Mogbo, Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed, who will play more among them. We will get into all kinds of positional battles, but I want to start with what I think is going to be the sort of lineup conversation that dominates our lives between now and the start of the NBA season. Will surely be a big topic of conversation once there's actually preseason games being played and we're seeing Darko Rajakovic roll out lineups. But number one here, Jamar, who plays more, Bruce Brown or Gradey Dick as the starting shooting guard for your Toronto Raptors? I talked about this a little bit on Wednesday's show when I dug into who I thought would be the fifth starter with the core four that we all assume are going to start in Quickley, Barrett, Barnes, and Poeltl. I think there's arguments for not just Gradey Dick and Bruce Brown, but a couple other guys as well to sneak in there as the fifth starter. But assuming those two guys are the leaders in the clubhouse as of right now, who plays more, Bruce or Gradey?
The Bruce Brown thing is still a little bit interesting to me. We talked last time about how he responded to someone on Twitter who was basically wanting him out the door. Is like, wow, you guys don't really want me anymore, huh?
Or Hoop Goose, then just caught up in this online drama. We love Hoop Goose.
He started it. And then I was also surprised at when he was there. He was there for the Quickley and Barnes conference with their signings. So it's like he's a part of the team at the same time when fans, and myself included, was just expecting him to be gone at some point. So now it's like you're starting to come around. It's like, okay, maybe he actually is going to be a part of the rotation this season, which I wasn't really expecting. At the same time, I still see him as a very temporary part of the team. So if you're preaching development, it would only make sense for Gradey Dick to get more minutes at the, whether it be this is the shooting guard conversation, but there's even minutes for Gradey to be had at the small forward position. But yeah, for me, I would personally like to see Gradey get more developmental minutes as opposed to Bruce Brown, who still may or may not be here. That's just my opinion, because I don't know, since the trade and since all the rumors about, okay, even it sounded for a while there that he was even campaigning himself to be on the Knicks to play with Tom Thibodeau or stuff like that. I've never really embraced Bruce as part of the team. I just always saw him as somebody temporary who's eventually going to be gone. And yeah, I'm still surprised it hasn't happened yet, but obviously the Raptors haven't got the offer that they were looking for, because they've tried, apparently, like reportedly they've tried, but they haven't got the offer yet. So I'm still leaning towards Gradey, because I know Gradey is going to be here for a while.
One of the great negotiating tactics one can use is to say, we want to get rid of this guy. We're trying to trade this guy. We're going to trade this guy. Trade us your best stuff, please. Yeah, no, we don't need to relitigate the mishandling of the Bruce situation. I think it is fair to say that with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit of a look at how the market transpired, the Raptors maybe should have just declined Bruce Brown and used the extra cap flexibility to go add some other players on the margins, but we can put that one to rest for now. As far as who plays more next season, I agree that it probably should be Gradey Dick, and I actually do think Gradey ends up getting more starts as the 2 guard than Bruce Brown when all is said and done. I could see Bruce being the starter from day one. I think there is at least a baked-in hope, expectation, maybe a little strong just because it's hard to make trades. But Bruce Brown, I think there's the expectation or the belief he will be dealt by the trade deadline. And so the back part of the season should very much be Gradey Dick's for the taking when it comes to the starting 2-guard minutes. And I do think just the way the team figures to be assembled, I like Bruce's element off of the bench more than I like it with the starters, as someone who is at best a fine 3-point shooter that defenses don't really care about. I think Gradey Dick has legitimate gravity and will continue to become more of a guy who draws the attention of defenses as he gets more of his feet wet in the NBA. And I think playing off of better players, this is always going to be where Gradey Dick is at his best, because that's the type of player he is. He's an amplifier, and other players of high talent are going to amplify him because of the attention they draw. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for the starting group to have Gradey Dick in there. I cited yesterday the number I've cited a lot, one of the only positive numbers from this past Raptors season, which was the starting lineup with Gary Trent Jr. in there, was a plus 12, near just about per 100 possessions, as the second most used lineup for the team. Gradey Dick kind of has similar Gary Trent Jr. vibes in terms of, not great defense, but lots of shooting, and I think more dynamic shooting than Trent. And so I think that makes sense. And I also think Bruce Brown has a chance to actually make an impact off the bench. I think a thing I would love to see the Raptors do more with him, Jamar, is deploy him as that sort of screening short roll guy in the way he's been used effectively in the past, playing with other good players. I think with Kelly Olynyk and the benefit of his spacing, not to say that Bruce Brown is going to be your quote-unquote backup center, but because there's not really a backup center on this team, I could see a way by which you kind of get value out of Bruce Brown, get production out of Bruce Brown, to be on offense, essentially using him as your 5 with space all around him to take advantage of his floaters, his playmaking from the short roll, and his work out of the nail. I think that might be a way to get the most out of him. I think we should have seen more of that last year. I feel like I recall Bruce Brown being like a short roll guy for the very first game he played for the Raptors, and they never really went back to it. I think that's a way to get the most out of him. And so, yeah, I think Gradey as the starting shooting guard is going to get more run than Bruce, just because it makes basketball sense. Do you have any other thoughts on the best usage of Bruce Brown before we move on to some more who's going to play more situations?
Yeah, regarding Bruce and short rolls, he did do a lot of that in Brooklyn. I do remember that. And I'm just curious, do you think that Bruce has to rebuild his trade value a little bit per se, or do you think that, like he was only with the Raptors for half a season. Do you think it's pretty much the same as it was before?
I struggle with this one because I don't think front offices will look at the back part of last year's season for Bruce Brown and be like, oh, he's cooked, he's terrible. Like, we're still a year removed from him playing high leverage minutes in the finals, closing games for the champions.
He literally had the go-ahead basket in that game 5 to win the championship. So,
the Pascal Siakam bucket for the Nuggets. Yes. I think that is I think the league-wide sort of understanding of what Bruce Brown is probably a little higher than what Raptors fans think about him. Frankly, I think Raptors fans have kind of wildly undervalued Bruce Brown and sort of missed the forest for the trees a little bit with him because of the way last year finished. And that's not to say he's a great player. It's not to say that because his salary is $23 million that he's not going to be hard to move and get some real return back. But I think, he plays decently well. The Raptors find a way to deploy him in this system. There will be a team out there that says, hey, we're a Bruce Brown away. Let's go do it. Let's send some salaries back and make this happen. I think the Lakers are a pretty obvious candidate with the D'Angelo Russell contract and the Jared Vanderbilt contract and whatever picks they might have to throw out the door. A couple of young players in Max Christie and Jalen Hood-Schifino could be in that mix as well, even though it's hard to make all the math work with the Lakers being so close to the first apron. But I think it's a thing where there's a little bit of having to recoup his value, but it's not like the whole league looked at the back part of last season and just declared that's the player Bruce Brown is. I think they have a bit of a wider view than that when they're evaluating players, and context matters. And the context for Bruce Brown last year sucked. We're going to come back, Jamar, and get into a few more of these who's going to play more situations, including Jonathan Mogbo or Jacoby Walter, both draft picks of the Raptors, one a first rounder, one a second rounder. Who's going to play more? We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sporting events you want to go to. And right now, baseball season is in full swing, and Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Obviously the Blue Jays going strong and playing lots of games, losing lots of games, but that means the tickets might be a little more affordable. You can go and get yourself some tickets and get yourself a little discount when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout when you go and buy tickets for the Toronto Blue Jays. Of course, maybe you want to travel abroad. Maybe you want to drive down for a little baseball trip. Go check out Camden Yards in Baltimore, or take a trip to Yankee Stadium, or drive to Detroit, the beautiful Comerica Park. Oh man, that park rules. Maybe you want to go there. You can buy tickets there as well. Get views from your seat if you've never been there before, so you know exactly what you're getting into. It's all there on the Game Time app. Go download Game Time today. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase, and take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back at it here with Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic, the God of the Game recap, who will have hopefully some Summer League games to recap very, very soon. And we are all waiting with bated breath on those Jamar Hinds Summer League recaps, baby. Those Ulrich Shamshay takes. Fire them off, baby. A reminder, you can check out all of our other wonderful stuff at Locked On, including Locked On Leafs. Our pals Mike and Dave covering a wild off season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a huge pivotal season coming up. Have you heard this before? Go check out Locked On Leafs. Mike and Dave covering all that's going on with the Buds, who, make me sad all the time, but that's okay. Mike and Dave are there to be my friends among the sadness. Okay, let's continue on asking who's going to play more. And we're not going to go with like a positional distinction on this one. I'm just curious what you think. Jonathan Mogbo, 31st overall pick, 6'6", 6'7", 7'2" wingspan, is going to probably get some run at the wing, and I would imagine a little bit as a backup 5. Jacoby Walter, the 19th overall pick, the first-round pick who the Raptors did not think would even be there at 19. He is, of course, just barely going to be 20 years old when the season begins. He's a couple years younger than Jonathan Mogbo, and he notably plays at a position where a whole lot of other guys play the position on this Raptors depth chart. Let me ask you here, Jamar, who plays more, Jonathan Mogbo or Jacoby Walter in their rookie seasons with the Raptors?
Okay, so I see comparisons between Mogbo and Pascal Siakam as a rookie. If you remember Siakam, this was when the Raptors drafted Siakam. This was at a time where they had a rotating new power forward every single season. And basically they were waiting for Jared Sullinger to come back. They had Luis Scola the year before and Amir Johnson the year before that. So they, out of necessity, they had to start Siakam, even though he wasn't totally ready. And then he went to the G League along with Fred, won a championship there, and then became part of the bench mob the following season. Now, I'm not saying Mogbo's going to start anything. That's what I'm saying. But I feel out of necessity to begin the season, he will probably get more minutes than Walter, because of also Bruce Brown, which we just mentioned, the glut at the kind of like the shooting guard position where Walter normally plays. So I could totally see Mogbo getting more minutes at the beginning of the season until the roster is a little bit more straightened out. And then probably later in the season, I could see Walter getting more minutes than Mogbo.
Interesting.
Depending on what moves they make.
Yeah, for sure. I just think Mogbo is straight up going to play more minutes, basically start to finish, than Jakob Poeltl. I think Walter's a little further away from sort of what his peak is going to be. He's just 20 years old. I think 19 still in the day of the draft. Mogbo is going to be, I believe, 23 when the season starts, or if not 23 just yet, very close to it. And look, you know, we can get into ceiling and all of that, but you would assume that the 22, 23-year-old is going to be a little bit more ready for the NBA out of the gate than the 20-year-old who, you know, had some very clear issues with his defense and has some clear development to do. It's not to say Mogbo doesn't have development to do, but I think he's got a more well-rounded skill set right now. And it's a skill set and a size set that this team is badly going to need. I think he's going to get asked to try to guard you know, opposing wings and see what he can do there. I think he's going to get asked to fill in as a backup 5 and play in lineups next to Kelly Olynyk, playing lineups next to Scottie Barnes in the front court, just to see what he can do. It doesn't mean that he's going to go drive winning. Very few rookies ever do that, and I'm not expecting that of Jonathan Mogbo, even if I am very in on the Jonathan Mogbo experience and the long-term upside that he might have. But yeah, I just think because of the positional glut, because Walter very much feels like he needs a lot of seasoning in the G League in a way that Mogbo maybe doesn't, just because of his sort of mature physical frame and the skills, the sort of soft ball skills he has. I think we're going to see Mogbo just kind of very clearly lead the Raptors in minutes, and among rookies, that is. And let me just sort of get even a little more bold with this. Okay. I think Jonathan Mogbo finishes like top 8 in minutes on the team, period. I think he's going to end up being a rotation piece for this team that is not exactly trying to go and win, but I think he's going to give them the best shot in a lot of cases of just having functional size on the floor from a guy who they want to see something from. You know, again, he might probably loses those minutes because rookies lose minutes, but I think just because of the lack of guys his size who have his defensive profile, I think he's just going to kind of be thrust into the job. And you know, I think he can perform quite well with that minutes load. Any retort or rebuttal for that?
No, I pretty much agree with what you were saying. And remember, just last season, we saw Gradey do a couple of stints with the G League, especially like at the beginning when he was a little bit struggling with his shot and whatnot. So he's kind of had an extended run at the G League. So obviously it wouldn't be surprising to see Walter there too. But you've kind of convinced me on the fact that I was thinking that maybe, like, you know, the last couple months of the season, you might see Walter get more minutes than Mogbo, but like out of necessity, I actually kind of changed my mind. I kind of agree with you there.
A convincing podcast argument. Score one for me. All right. Next one here. Let's go with a bit of a one guy versus the field question. Okay. Davion Mitchell. I don't think he's a point guard. Some people do. It seems like the Raptors maybe think he is a point guard. So what I think matters not. Davion Mitchell or anyone else as the backup point guard for this team, who plays more? You got Davion Mitchell or the field as the backup point guard for your Toronto Raptors.
I'm trying to rack off the top of my head who the field would be.
Jamal Shed is in there. I would say Scottie Barnes will get some nominal point guard minutes, although I'm not sure he'll ever be out there with no other guards. And then I think Bruce Brown, I guess, sort of qualifies as a backup point guard in some cases. Yeah, it's kind of it's a big old nebulous mess because they don't really have a backup point guard on the roster, but someone's got to do it.
I did see the conversations in the comments regarding your thoughts on Mitchell being a point guard or not. So I'm not going to touch on those, but I feel the Raptors are going to give him a shot there. So they're going to see what he can do there and then decide based on his results whether they, you know, if backup point is viable for him or to even have him as a small wing defender or something like that. I don't know. But I think I'm probably going to take Mitchell. And again, I think this is something to begin the season and can be changed later on. But for the start of the season, I think they're going to give Mitchell that shot at the backup point to see what he can do. That would be my guess. Obviously, we've seen Bruce Brown able to run it in Denver. We've seen Scottie kind of have those transitional minutes and in the past where he didn't really have great options to run with being backup point. But I figure, hey, just give Mitchell a shot. You got to see what you have, right? So
yeah, no, for sure. Like if you're gonna do the reclamation project, you should really put the project out there and see what you can get. I just think I see a lot of Mitchell playing with Immanuel Quickley, and I would not classify him as the point guard in that situation. But that said, like, as much as I would love for Jamal Shed to walk in and just sort of be like, hey, I'm the backup point guard for the next 10 years, deal with it. I think it's going to take a little bit of time if that's going to happen. And any second round pick is inherently a lottery ticket that is probably not going to cash. And so I don't know if you can go and say Jamal Shed's going to be the backup point guard through the season next year. I'd probably go Davion Mitchell. I don't think that's great for the Raptors' chances of winning bench minutes necessarily, but I'm open to being surprised, and maybe a change of scenery is good for him. I just think the lack of pull-up shooting, the fact that he actually did kind of flash some stuff as a catch-and-shoot guy last year, and the defense I think he's going to have to play on twos for this team just because of the sort of lack of defense they have in that guard rotation. I think he's going to be more classified as a two than a point guard a lot of the time, but I also don't see anyone else racking up a ton of minutes as the backup point guard, at least not until they sign Kyle Lowry on a minimum. We'll come back on the other side, Jamar, and get into a few more who's going to play mores to wrap up the show. We will do that momentarily. All right, back at it here, closing things out with Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic. A reminder, Locked On Sports Today is your all-day streaming channel on YouTube. You can go subscribe to the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 feed, and you got Locked On shows covering all the biggest stories in sports from local experts who can only cover those stories the way that we can at Locked On. So go check it out, put it on in the background, have it be white noise, have it be the thing that preoccupies your time while you're trying to work. It's all beautiful. Go check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7. All right. Couple of guys here, Jamar, who might be on the outside of the rotation looking in, who may or may not be on the team for all or some of the season. We're still waiting to hear exactly what's going to go down with one of these guys. But as it stands right now, he's on the team. The Raptors are not letting him out of his contract. And he is at a position where, the Raptors could use a little bit of juice, I suppose, in the front court. Who's going to play more this season? Chris Boucher or Sasha Vezenkov? Who you got?
Oof. That's a tough one. So the whole Sasha Vezenkov thing, he's not going overseas?
As of right now, and Mark Deeks had a big thing on this, a good NBA cap guy, about how, basically it's in the Raptors' court, and if Vezenkov is okay having all of the $7 million of his deal bought out and not getting any of it, then he can leave, and that's fine, but is he going to give up that money? The Raptors decide they want to do, it's still, he's on the team. He's under contract with the Toronto Raptors, whether he likes it or not, as it stands right now. Thing is obviously subject to change at a moment's notice, but as it stands right now, it seems like Vezenkov's going to be on the roster going into the year.
Boucher is another weird one because he spent so much time last year. Like, how many times was Darko asked about playing Boucher?
Right.
A ton. It's in different parts of the season. And then you saw over basically like the last month or so, he basically didn't play at all. We thought that this is the last we've seen of Chris Boucher as a Raptor. Yet he's still on the roster. So I'm like doing this in real time in my head. I could see some sort of, because I'm still pretty uncertain about the whole, is Vezenkov going to even be here, period. And also he's more one-dimensional, where basically he's just, as far as I know, basically just a shooter. I don't really see much he does outside of that. He didn't really crack the Kings rotation, and obviously the Kings have a better team than the Raptors did. But I could see some sort of random turnaround where Chris Boucher is in the rotation again out of necessity, along with Mogbo, as opposed to Vezenkov getting minutes when he pretty much seems like he wants to be overseas as opposed to being in the NBA. So I'm going to lean towards the Boucher part of this, which is kind of weird because he's, along with Bruce, he's another guy that fans were expecting to just be gone, yet he's still here.
Do the Raptors lead the league in guys who you say your farewells to who don't actually get traded? Because Kyle Lowry, this happened where he basically held court for an hour the day before the 2021 trade deadline, only to not be traded. Bruce Brown, Chris Boucher, they simply love to not trade guys who everyone thinks is about to get traded. I am with you. I think Boucher ends up playing more. I think they're just going to need his athleticism and length. And I don't think he's a great defender, but I think he is a better defender than Sasha Vezenkov is. And as much as Vezenkov's three-point shooting is nice, I think they're just going to get that three-point shooting from the four in the form of Kelly Olynyk. And I don't think you're ever going to want to be in a situation where you're playing Kelly Olynyk and Sasha Vezenkov together in a front court, because that will be an absolute disaster show. And so I think it's a pretty good chance Vezenkov gets buried again, because as much as this roster is like limited in certain front court spots, they do have a lot of power forwards. And I think there's a real chance he just gets kind of pushed down. I think he's going to lose minutes to Jonathan Mogbo because of the defense. I think he's going to lose minutes potentially to Chris Boucher because of the defense. And I just think it's going to be hard for him to crack the rotation as a guy who is basically a stationary three-point shooter. Maybe there's more to his game. He didn't win EuroLeague MVP for no reason, but I don't know if he's going to get a chance to really flash much more than stationary corner shooting. And because of that, I think they're just going to have other skills in the front court they're going to need. In particular, Chris Boucher's offensive rebounding and, three-point contesting and all that stuff. I just think he does a little bit more that this team is going to be crying out for as far as, rotational needs. So, yeah, I'm going to go Boucher over Vezenkov. And I frankly don't think it's going to be close. I would love to see a Chris Boucher renaissance in his last year, probably with the team. I think that would be a really nice, fun story for him to be like a nice ninth man for this team. I think it's on the table. All right, a couple more quick ones here. Who plays the most as the backup center on this team? I've listed Kelly Olynyk, Jonathan Mogbo, Scottie Barnes. You could throw in Chris Boucher. Maybe there's someone else I'm not thinking of who could slide in there. But who plays more as the backup center to Jakob Poeltl? If you're calculating all of the center minutes over the course of the season, who do you got getting the most minutes of that group I just laid out?
I'm probably going to go Scottie.
Yeah? Because
just to play some small ball minutes, which he has done in the past, because I think it's going to be more likely he does that than to do a backup point role. Mm-hmm. And I would assume he's going to be on the court a ton, obviously. So I figure he's going to get more of those small ball big minutes than small ball point minutes. So I'd pick him over the other options. That would be my guess.
I think that's fair. I do think when all is said and done, like the cleaning the glass positional breakdowns, we'll probably have Kelly Olynyk as the sort of nominal guy who played the most backup center. But I think that will be sort of a misrepresentation of how things actually worked. Because I think when you have Scottie Barnes, Kelly Olynyk lineups, which I think we'll see a lot of, that was, of course, a big sort of staple of their bench units when they had their team together for that 1 month of last season. I think Barnes is the nominal center in those lineups. I think he is the sort of last line of defense at the rim. And I think we saw just it's not Kelly Olynyk's position anymore. He cannot really hang as a 5 in today's NBA. He needs to have some sort of rim protection next to him, playing the 4, maybe up against sort of slower guys who aren't the super physical beasts on the inside that a lot of centers are these days. Like, I think that's like Olynyk should be exclusively a 4 on this team. He'll probably get some minutes at the 5 just because of the lack of guys they have there. But I think Barnes is a good call. To go back to my Jonathan Mogbo belief, I think, will he get 10 minutes a game as the backup center? And is that enough for him to be the leader in backup center minutes for this team? I think that's on the table. I think him and Olynyk could actually be a pretty fun second unit, 4-5 combo. even with Mogbo being undersized. He's got the 7'2" wingspan. He definitely plays bigger than the 6'6" that he's listed at. And I don't think 6'6" is accurate. We could do the thing where, like we did with Scottie Barnes a couple years ago, where we just increase his height every time we talk about him. So by the time it's October, Jonathan Mogbo's actually 7'4". We'll see. Maybe we start that bit today. But I'm going to say Mogbo gets more minutes as the backup center, even if I think actually Olynyk is the one who will be listed as the backup center the most. I don't think that will be how the lineups actually function in practice. Let's get to one last one here, Jamar.
Sure.
Who plays the fifth most clutch time minutes on this team? We've talked about the starters, but who is closing games alongside RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, Scottie Barnes, Jakob Poeltl the most? I think there's a few candidates here. Who you got as the fifth most used player in clutch minutes for your Toronto Raptors in 2024-25?
This was another conversation near the end of the season where when Gradey came back and we wanted to see Gradey in closing lineups, not obviously to space the floor, but just to, give him the experience on a team that wasn't winning anyway, to see what he could do in clutch time. And he had a couple moments. I remember a Hawks game where I think someone got the steal, or maybe he got the steal, and he had a huge layup. And I think Scottie even kissed him on the forehead or something like that.
Yes.
So it's like one of the few moments from last season that are like good moments from last season that I can recall. I would like to see Gradey be the fifth guy in those situations, probably at the beginning of the season. Again, the Bruce Brown, Gradey Dick conversation. I feel like Bruce Brown might be that guy, but eventually as the season progresses, I'd like to see Gradey in those closing lineups. I
think it's going to be Kelly Olynyk.
Really?
I don't think they're going to start with that lineup, because I think it's going to be important for Olynyk to, come in off the bench and offer that extra creation and whatnot and 3-point shooting with what figures to be kind of a questionable second unit at the moment. Maybe something rounds into form there and you get bench mob 2.0. We'll see. But I think the lineup of Quickley, Barrett, Barnes, Olynyk, and Poeltl, it's like the biggest functional lineup they can throw out there. And I just think the blend of shooting and skill will make that a pretty damn good offensive group. Defensively, it could struggle, but I do think you stand the best chance of sort of insulating Olynyk by having Poeltl's rim protection out there, having Scottie's help side stuff out there. It requires a lot of Scottie and RJ as individual on-ball guys on creative wings, but I think that's the lineup. Like, that's just their five best players probably, right? Like, Olynyk is still... like, he's better than Gradey Dick. He's probably better than Bruce Brown at this point. It's just their best five, and I could see that being the look they go to close games. Now, will they win many close games when this is their lineup? We'll see. The defense is probably going to struggle a little bit, but I think they'll have the offensive juice to hang. And if you get incremental growth or, significant growth on defense from anybody in that group, Barnes and Barrett being the two guys I'm circling, Quickley obviously has some growth to do on that end as well. But I think that is going to be their most potent lineup they can throw out when things are really on the line. And that maybe suggests that this team is going to win like low 30s games. And that's fine. I think that's probably end of the day where they want to be regardless. Any sort of retort to that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't even considering Olynyk, to be honest, but that's pretty fair in terms of the versatility that he can bring on the offensive end. I was just again, seeing that the Raptors need to develop some of their younger players. I just figure that Gradey should get some looks at least. He's going to need that experience closing out games like we discussed last season. So, but yeah, I can see that going either way.
Yeah, I also think there's a world in which Davion Mitchell's defense is needed in closing lineups, and he becomes a guy in there too. Yeah, look, they should try to win games before crunch time, I guess is what I'm really saying here.
Not a believer in their crunch time, offense or defense, I see.
I'm a believer in the offense. I don't know if I'm a believer in the defense just yet. We got to see. But I'm very open to being proven wrong. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out, and thanks for being here, Jamar, as you indulged me in another one of my very silly off-season game shows. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
That was a good game show idea, though. Promotion, I'm finally doing some game recaps, as Sean kind of teased a few minutes ago. I am going to do a recap of the first 3 Summer League games. I believe the first one is against Oklahoma City on Saturday, so I should have a recap up by Sunday. And then I think they play Utah or Denver or somebody like that. But yeah, anyway, my point is I'm going to be doing some game recaps. I'm rusty as all hell because I haven't done a recap in like 3 months. That's what happens when the Raptors go out of or don't even qualify for the playoffs. It's just there's a big break. So yeah, I'm gonna try and get rid of the rust, I guess. For lack of I had another, I don't, whatever.
A great bit of self-promotion from Jamar.
Yeah. It's horrible on all fronts. Hopefully I'll be better at my recap than promoting my recap. Let's just put it that way.
I think that is a fair thing to hope and expect because you are the god of the game recap for a reason. You'll shake off that rust in no time. On the topic of Summer League, I'm away on vacation next week, so I'm pre-canning some episodes. Got an episode with Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Cougs, covered Jamal Shed for all 4 years he played for Houston. That's going to be a really good one. We'll drop that next week. We've got a mailbag show with Katie Heindel and some other stuff, but I will have a Summer League recap for the first couple of games that drops hopefully Monday morning. I got to, again, figure out times and all that stuff. But at the very least, you're going to have 3 or 4 shows to dig into while I'm away next week. They won't be the most timely in the world outside of that Summer League one after the first couple games. But we will have stuff for you nonetheless in the coming days as Summer League ratchets up. And we will, of course, cover it all in its totality once I'm back from vacation as well. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for rocking with the show and for supporting it on all the audio and video platforms. You can find it. It's, of course, for free. So go do that. Tell a friend if they like the show, too, to go do those things as well. I know there are more people who listen and watch to the show than we have YouTube subscribers. So go subscribe if you haven't yet, please. Even if you don't watch on video, just give me the numbers. Just boost my ego, please. It's very nice. And we're going to leave it there. My basketball is behind me, so I'm going to have to break kayfabe for a sec and go and get my basketball so I can definitely make this shot in front of Jamar. Hang on one sec. Jamar, fill time. Tee up this shot for me, please. Build the suspense.
Okay, play by play. I see the basketball under the couch. He's going down to the couch. He picks it up. It goes back to the chair. He's going over his head again. And did that go in?
That went in. That was backboarding in, baby. The bank's open. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.